I used to think family humiliation had a limit. Like, there had to be a line people wouldn't cross in front of others. Turns out, I was wrong. Dead wrong. Because for 10 straight years, my own parents didn't just criticize me in private, they turned it into a performance. Every holiday. Every dinner. Every gathering. And I was always the punchline. Still figuring things out, my mom would say with that tight smile, the kind that looks polite but cuts like glass. "Your sister bought a house at 26, my dad would casually add, swirling his drink like he was delivering a fun fact instead of a verdict. Meanwhile, my sister Kayla? Oh, she was the golden standard. Corporate job, perfect husband, perfect hair, perfect everything. The kind of person who made people feel small just by existing, and she knew it. And me? I was the failure. Not because I was broke. Not because I was lazy. But because I didn't follow their script. I walked away from a safe career path. I took risks. I built something on my own terms. It just didn't look impressive from the outside, yet. But they never cared about yet. Only about now. And now, I wasn't enough. The worst part? I started believing them. Until last Thanksgiving. That night changed everything. There were 14 people at the table. Extended family, Kayla's in-laws, even a couple of her husband's coworkers. My mom had gone all out, like she always did, trying to impress everyone. And right on cue, halfway through dinner, it started. "So," my mom said, setting down her fork and turning toward me like a spotlight just snapped on, "have you figured out what you're doing with your life yet?" The table went quiet. I felt every eye on me. Before I could even respond, she laughed lightly and added, "I mean, not everyone can be like Kayla. She married well. She has stability. A real career." Kayla smirked. Actually smirked. I felt my chest tighten, but I forced a smile. I was used to this. I could survive another round. Or so I thought. Because that's when my mom leaned closer, lowered her voice just enough to sound concerned, and said, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" That sentence? It used to break me. But this time, something inside me snapped. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just, quietly. Like a switch flipping. Because I knew something they didn't. Something that was about to walk through that front door. And ruin their perfect little image forever. I checked my phone under the table. One message. "I'm here." I looked up at my mom, still waiting for my answer, still expecting me to shrink. Instead, I smiled. "Actually," I said, standing up slowly, "I brought someone too." And right then, the door opened. Everything changed. The front door creaked open, and every single head at that table turned at the same time. You could actually feel the shift in the room. My mom frowned first, confused. My dad looked annoyed, like someone had interrupted his show. Kayla just leaned back in her chair, curious, but still smug, like whatever this was, it couldn't possibly matter. I didn't say a word. I just watched. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Slow. Steady. Confident. And then he stepped into the dining room. For a split second, nobody reacted. Like their brains couldn't catch up with what they were seeing. He was dressed simple, nothing flashy. Dark jacket, clean shirt, calm expression. The kind of guy you would walk past on the street without a second glance. But not tonight. Tonight, he didn't blend in. Tonight, he stood out like a crack in glass. My mom's face drained of color so fast it was almost scary. My dad shot up from his chair so quickly it scraped loudly against the floor. Kayla's smirk? Gone. Just gone. Because they knew him. And not in a good way. "Ethan," my mom whispered, her voice barely holding together. "Yeah." Ethan. The one name that had been banned in our house for years. The one person they pretended didn't exist. The one story they buried so deep they thought it would never come back up. But here he was. Standing in their dining room. Looking right at them. I crossed my arms, leaning casually against the wall like this was just another dinner moment. "Hope you don't mind," I said, my voice calm, almost too calm. "I figure Thanksgiving is about family, right?" Nobody laughed. Nobody moved. The tension was suffocating. My dad stepped forward, his face turning red. "What is he doing here?" Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have to. I did. I invited him. Simple. Clean. Final. My mom grabbed my dad's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. "No. No, he needs to leave. Right now." Her voice cracked on the last word. That was new. I had never seen my mom like that before. Not in control. Not composed. Just scared. And that's when I knew. I wasn't crazy for doing this. I was right. Kayla stood up slowly, her chair sliding back with a soft scrape. "This isn't funny," she said, her voice low, sharp. "You don't get to just bring him here like this." I tilted my head, pretending to think. "Like what?" I asked. "Like he doesn't belong?" Ethan finally spoke. One sentence. Calm. Measured. Dangerous. "I think we all know why I'm here." Silence. Heavy. Crushing silence. My mom shook her head quickly, almost panicking now. "No. We are not doing this. Not tonight." But it was already too late. Because the moment Ethan stepped inside that room, the truth walked in with him. And I wasn't about to let them bury it again. Not this time. I pulled out the empty chair at the table and looked straight at him. "Go ahead," I said softly. "Have a seat." And the second he did, everything started to fall apart. The second Ethan sat down, the entire table felt unstable. Like one wrong word could flip everything over. Nobody touched their food anymore. Forks rested mid-plate, glasses untouched. Even the background noise from the TV in the living room suddenly felt too loud, too out of place. My mom was the first to break. "No," she said again, shaking her head like she could undo reality. "This is not happening. You need to leave." Ethan didn't even look at her. Instead, he glanced around the table, taking in every face. Calm. Controlled. Like he had already lived this moment in his head 100 times. "I'm not here to cause a scene," he said. That made Kayla laugh under her breath. Short. Sharp. Defensive. "Really?" "Because that's exactly what you're doing." I pushed my chair back slightly and leaned forward. "No," I said, my eyes locking onto hers. "The scene started years ago. He's just finishing it." Kayla's jaw tightened. Good. For once, she didn't have a perfect comeback ready. My dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough of this cryptic nonsense. Say what you came to say and get out." There it was. Control. He was trying to grab it back. Ethan finally looked at him. And for the first time, there was something sharp in his expression. "You sure you want me to say it here?" he asked. That question hit harder than anything else. Because suddenly, it wasn't just tension anymore. It was fear. Real fear. My mom's grip on my dad's arm tightened again. "Don't," she whispered. "Please, don't. Please?" I almost laughed. This was the same woman who spent a decade tearing me down in front of people without a second thought. And now she was begging? Ethan leaned back slightly in his chair, studying them. I kept quiet, he said slowly. For years. Out of respect. Out of hope, I guess. He paused. Then his voice dropped just enough to cut deeper. But watching you sit here, pretending to be this perfect family? Judging her? He nodded toward me, like you didn't destroy someone else's life to build that image? The air left the room. Completely. Kayla's face went pale. Stop talking. Ethan didn't even blink. You want me to stop? Or you want them to stop hearing it? That landed hard. One of the relatives shifted uncomfortably. Someone else quietly set their glass down. You could feel it spreading, that curiosity, that realization that something big was about to come out. My dad pointed toward the door. Get out. Now. But his voice didn't have the same power anymore. Because nobody was looking at him. They were all looking at Ethan. Waiting. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms, completely at ease now. For the first time in years. I wasn't the one under pressure. Ethan exhaled slowly. Then he said it. Ask Kayla, he said. Ask her what really happened the night she met her husband. The word met? Yeah. That wasn't an accident. Every eye at that table snapped to Kayla. And just like that. The golden girl didn't look so perfect anymore. The silence that followed? It wasn't normal silence. It was the kind that presses on your chest. The kind that makes people avoid eye contact because they already know, whatever comes next is going to be ugly. Every single person at that table turned to Kayla. Waiting. Watching. Judging. For the first time in her life, she didn't have control of the room. What is he talking about? One of her in-laws finally asked, breaking the tension. Kayla let out a short laugh, but it sounded forced. Fake. Nothing, she said quickly. He's just trying to stir drama. He's always been like this. Ethan tilted his head slightly. Always, he repeated. That's interesting. My mom jumped in immediately, her voice sharp, desperate. We are not doing this. This is private. It's old. It's irrelevant. I couldn't help it, I smiled. Because that was their favorite move. Call it old. Call it irrelevant. Bury it. But tonight? Nah. We were digging everything up. Then it shouldn't be a problem talking about it, I said calmly, picking up my glass like this was casual dinner conversation. My dad shot me a look that could have killed. You need to stop. No, I said, meeting his eyes. You needed to stop 10 years ago. That hit. You could see it. Kayla's composure cracked just a little. You don't even know what you're talking about, she snapped at me. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Then tell them, he said softly. Tell them how you met Daniel. There it was. A name. Kayla's husband, Daniel, who had been quietly sitting at the end of the table this whole time, finally looked up. Confused. Uneasy. Kayla, he said, his voice cautious. What's going on? She didn't answer. Not right away. Her eyes darted between my parents, like she was waiting for them to save her. Fix it. Control it. But they couldn't. Not anymore. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You didn't meet him by chance, he continued. You didn't fall in love the way you tell people. Kayla slammed her hand on the table this time. Stop. But it was too late. He kept going. You knew he was with someone. That landed like a bomb. A few people at the table gasped. Someone whispered, wait, what? Daniel's face changed instantly. What does that mean? Kayla stood up so fast her chair nearly tipped over. It's not like that, she said quickly. Too quickly. Ethan's eyes didn't leave hers. You were her friend, he said. You used her. You got close to him through her, and then you took him. The room erupted into quiet chaos. Murmurs. Shock. Disbelief. I didn't say a word. I just watched. Because this? This was only the surface. Kayla shook her head wildly. That's not true. He's twisting things. But her voice wasn't confident anymore. It was cracking. Breaking. Daniel slowly stood up, staring at her like he didn't recognize the person in front of him. Kayla, he said again, firmer this time. Is that true? And for the first time ever. She didn't have an answer ready. And that's when I knew. We were just getting started. Kayla opened her mouth. And nothing came out. No perfect explanation. No clever spin. No smooth recovery. Just silence. Daniel stared at her, waiting. Hoping, maybe, that she would laugh it off. That she would say something, anything, that made this all sound ridiculous. But she didn't. And that was answer enough. It wasn't like that, she finally said, her voice shaky now. You don't understand? I understand exactly what he said, Daniel cut in, his tone colder than I had ever heard. You were friends with someone, and you went after her boyfriend? Kayla's eyes filled with panic. We weren't that close. Ethan let out a quiet, humorless laugh. That's how you justify it? My mom slammed her glass down. Enough. This is getting out of control. I looked at her, raising an eyebrow. Now it's out of control? She ignored me, turning to Daniel with that fake calm voice she always used to manage situations. Daniel, sweetheart, this is all being exaggerated. It was a misunderstanding from years ago. Years ago. There it was again. Their favorite escape route. But Daniel wasn't buying it. Who was she, he asked, his eyes still locked on Kayla. And that's when Ethan dropped the part they were really afraid of. She was engaged to me. Silence. Absolute silence. It felt like the air got sucked out of the room. Daniel blinked, processing it. Wait, what? Ethan didn't look away. The girl Kayla befriended? The one she got close to? He paused just enough to let it sink in. She was my fiancée. Kayla shook her head immediately. That's not fair. Fair? Ethan snapped, his calm finally cracking for a second. You want to talk about fair? He leaned forward, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through everything. You didn't just steal someone's boyfriend. You destroyed a relationship. You lied. You manipulated. And then you walked away like you did nothing wrong. Daniel took a step back like he'd been hit. You told me you met through mutual friends, he said slowly, his voice tight. Kayla rushed toward him. We did. Eventually. I mean. You lied, he said flatly. That word echoed. Lied. Simple. Final. My dad tried stepping in again, his voice rising. This is ridiculous. People make mistakes. It's in the past. I laughed under my breath. Mistakes? I repeated. Funny how her mistake turned into a perfect marriage, and the person she hurt just disappeared. Ethan glanced at me briefly. We both knew the truth. He didn't disappear. He was pushed out. Silenced. Just like they tried to do to me for years. Daniel looked around the table, at my parents, at Kayla, at the tension, the panic, the obvious cracks forming in everything he thought was real. Is there anything else, he said slowly, that I don't know? Nobody answered. And that silence? That was louder than anything else tonight. Because deep down, they all knew. This wasn't the full story. Not even close. That question hung in the air like a loaded gun. Is there anything else that I don't know? Daniel wasn't just asking Kayla anymore. He was asking everyone. And nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because this was the part they buried the deepest. Kayla looked at my parents again, desperation written all over her face. Say something, she whispered. But for once, they didn't rush to protect her. So I did something they never expected. I stood up. Slow. Calm. Completely in control. Yeah, I said, my voice steady. There is. Every eye turned to me. Not the failure. Not the disappointment. Me. I took a step forward, resting my hands lightly on the table. The reason Ethan never said anything before? I continued. The reason this all just disappeared? I looked straight at my mom. Is because you made sure it did. Her face went white. Don't, she said quietly. But I didn't stop. You went to him, I said, nodding toward Ethan. You told him to stay quiet. You said exposing Kayla would ruin her future, her reputation, her life. My dad shook his head immediately. That's not how it happened. I let out a short laugh. Really? Then correct me. He couldn't. Of course he couldn't. Because it was true. Ethan spoke again, his voice calmer now, but heavier. They offered to handle it, he said. Told me it was better for everyone if I walked away. Daniel's head slowly turned toward my parents. You knew, he asked. That question hit harder than anything else tonight. Because this wasn't just about Kayla anymore. This was about all of them. My mom's composure finally shattered. We were protecting our family, she said, her voice trembling. We did what we had to do. I shook my head. No. You protected her. At the cost of everyone else. Kayla stepped forward, tears finally spilling over. I was young, she said. I made a mistake. You made a choice, I cut in. And then you let them cover it up like it never happened. Daniel backed away from her completely now. Like there was a line on the floor he couldn't cross anymore. 10 years, he said quietly. 10 years, and you never told me. Kayla reached for him, but he pulled back. That was it. That was the moment everything broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just, completely. He looked at her one last time, then shook his head. I don't even know who you are. And just like that. The perfect marriage cracked right down the middle. No more image. No more illusion. Just truth. Messy, ugly, unavoidable truth. I exhaled slowly, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Not revenge. Not satisfaction. Just freedom. Because for the first time ever, I wasn't carrying their version of me anymore. I wasn't the failure at the table. I wasn't the comparison. I wasn't the girl who had to shrink to make someone else look better. I turned toward the door, grabbing my coat. Behind me, the room was still in chaos, voices low, emotions high, everything unraveling exactly the way it should have a long time ago. Ethan stood up too, giving me a small nod. No words needed. We were done here. As I stepped outside into the cold night air, I heard my mom call my name. I didn't turn around. Didn't stop. Didn't hesitate. Because some doors? Once they close, they're not meant to be opened again.